as we already covered how to play against the d6, now it's time to take a look at another option for neither players, which is a6. e4, c5, knight c3, a6. This exact video is very, very bad news for me because I know I'm losing my Banterblitz weapon, my favorite move, which I'm using always against knight c3, even in classical games, because I'm gonna reveal the way how to play against the a6. And I'm very sad about it because I won many games with black pieces. I am myself playing this a6, but it's time to reveal the secret. g3. This is the move which I like for white players. You can of course play knight ge2 and keep all options open. For example, if you go knight ge2, then after e6, I think the best way is to transpose into the can variation with d4, cd4 and knight d4. Or if you want to play against Najdorf, then you can either go here d4 or g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and this will lead to a good version of, so to say, Fabiano's setup against the Najdorf. b5 is also an option for black as well, and here I would also recommend white players to go d4, cd4, knight d4, e6 and bishop d3, and once again transpose into the can variation with knight c3, b5 and bishop d3. But this is not what I'm going to recommend it to you, because if you're not playing the open Sicilian, then we should have something for you. That's why after a6, I want the knight to stay on g1 and I want to start with g3, just because after b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, d3 and e6, I want to develop this knight not on e2, not on f3 after f4, but on h3. I think that this is the very interesting way to play against the a6 line of closed Sicilian, because I think that if you play f4 or knight ge2, especially knight ge2, then these knights are very awkward. They are disturbing each other. Most logical would be to play, let's say, f4, which I faced many times, and it's an, of course, interesting option for white as well. And here I used to play b4. The idea of b4 is that I don't want to go d5 right away, because then d5 is met with f5. And the play becomes very complicated, and I think it's in white's favor. d4, d takes e6, f takes e6. Well, to accept this sacrifice on c3 will be very risky for black, because after e takes f7, king f7 and knight f3, white is going to castle very soon, and the f-file and the king, the black king is very weak on f7, will be very dangerous for black. That is why after f takes e6, f takes e6 and knight ce2, e5, knight f3, knight c6, castle, knight f6, in this position I think that it favors white, because the pawns are, yes, they are very advanced, but I think that they are a tiny bit weak. a4 emphasizes that black has to do something on the queen side. He either leaves the b5 without touching, or plays b4, which looks totally ugly. Queen b6 can be another option, but after queen b6, a b5, rook a8, bishop a8, and c3, white is emphasizing on black's pawns in the center, which are very much advanced, and black still needs to develop and castle. So I think that white has perfect position and advantage. So this is why after f4, I myself never played d5. I always went b4 or knight f6. Let's say b4, and I nearly all the time faced knight ce2 or knight b1. But knight ce2, and during my Banter Blitz shows, I was always saying, okay, now let's see, guys, if you analyzed it on Engine, and let's see if you know the right move. I think that after knight ce2 and d5, black has brilliant play. With brilliant, I mean that, of course, white is not worse, but black is doing very, very fine. White has to decide either to close the center or to take the pawns in the center, but black will develop very easily, and I think black's play is easier than white's. So this is why after b4, I think that knight a4 is an interesting option. The point is that after, let's say, d5, oh, sorry, not here, after d5, ed5, black has to go knight f6, because if he takes it back with the pawn, then after queen e2, black really has big problems with this pawn on c5. Bishop e7 would not be great because of knight c5. Queen e7 protects the c5 pawn, but then after either queen e7 or knight b6 directly, the d5 pawn is lost. So advancing these pawns very early can be also very dangerous for black as well. d5, ed5, knight f6, black is using the pin that white cannot take on e6, but after knight f3, bishop d5, because if black wants to take with the pawn anyway, then queen e2 is with the same problems. Queen e7 has to be played not to lose the c5 pawn, but then knight e5 creates lots of problems for black, as queen e7 is very awkwardly placed and this bishop on f8 still needs to be developed. So after knight f3, bishop d5 and a very powerful c4, I think, gives initiative to white players and is quite interesting option to start playing like this, to meet b4 with knight a4. Of course, c4, b takes c3 is the move, knight c3, and maybe bishop b7 or bishop c6 or even bishop e7 is possible, but I think bishop c6 is the most accurate way, because after bishop b7, castle, let's say, and bishop e7, that's a totally normal position. Knight e5, bishop g2 or queen c7, or after bishop g2, queen c7, the play becomes very double-edged. Bishop c6 is another option because you're kind of inviting knight e5. Oh, not now, sorry. Castle, I mean, castle, bishop e7 and knight e5, and we will transpose into the same variation. So after c4, sorry, here, after f4, b4 is another option, but another option which I was playing always is knight f6. I was kind of waiting that white knight develops on f3, and then I was playing b4. But the same has to happen here with knight a4, d5, and ed5, and we transpose into the same position with bishop d5 c4 or knight d5 castle, and then afterwards some play with knight e5 and rook e1. This is a perfect option for white to play against the a6 b4 system, to play b4, f4, b4, and knight a4. No other square for the knight but knight a4, because we need the e2 square for our queen. In case of d5, ed, ed, queen e2 is perfect. But what I like most for white is knight h3. This completely changes the situation on the board, because now we don't have f4, we don't have knight f3, but we have knight h3. And what are we going to do? Are we going to play f4? Are we going to play first knight e2? Or what is going on? Let's take a look. After knight h3, black has two valid options. Okay, many valid options, but two popular options, which is knight f6 main move, or which is b4 once again. b4, knight e2, d5, and castle. This would transpose into the lines which we will see shortly. But let's make it clear right now what is going on here, what happens. After castle, white wants to keep the tension in the center, which means that either I will go e5, either I will take ed5 at one point, and emphasizing that de4, de4, or first knight g5 is in white's favor. Because if I'm gonna take this pawn with the piece, let's say h6, knight e4, it's definitely good for white. Now knight f6, knight d6 moves are threatening, so queen c7 to develop, to protect the bishop on b7, and then white is playing against these advanced pawns, which is like, is it a strength or weakness? This is about white's play to, it's about white to reveal it's a weakness or strength. So after b4, knight e2, d5, castle, and let's say knight f6, white can normally play either knight ef4, or he can also go a3 type of moves, or just make a waiting move. Now let's see what happens on knight f6 directly, castle, and d6. We already saw that d5 can be here without b4 can be dangerous, because if ed5 and ed5, then there is very annoying bishop g5 move, and if knight d5, then knight e4 creates again some problems with this advanced pawns on c5, and maybe a4, b4, c3 is the plan. Castle, d6, and f4. After f4, b4, because that's why black is playing all this a6, b5 stuff. Knight e2, bishop e7, and knight f2. This is why I like to develop my knight on h3, because I think that knight e2 and knight f2, they are working perfectly together to create an attack on the king side with g4, h4, maybe knight g3, g5. This is what I like in knight h3. Knight c6, g4, knight d7, and a3. A very interesting move, because first of all, white wants to take control all over the board. it's not like I'm only having the king side, but I also want to be in control on the queen side, so that black does not get any weird ideas to castle long side, let's say with queen b6 and long castle, so that my pawns, my advanced pawns on e4, f4, and g4 are not left like this and become weaknesses. So a3 is a very interesting move, provoking a5 and not allowing long castle anymore. Knight g3 and queen b6. This was quite a big mistake, I think, in the game of Vityukov-Donchenko in 2017. A very nice game, which was won by Vityukov, a white player. Knight g3, queen b6. I think it was very, very necessary to play something like h6 to stop this g5 movement. g5, bishop e3, and castle here would be not great, because after knight h3 we would still think of g5, but instead of castle, maybe interesting for black would be to play bishop h4 to keep some keep these pawns blocked on the king side and not allow any movement. And after knight h3 to play on the queen side with rook b8 or rook a6. The position is very complicated, but what I like for white is that black, it's not easy for black to castle short side, because then all kind of g5 and knight h5, queen g4 is starting, and you don't want to do that. But would you leave your king in the center? It's very, very annoying. Let's see what happened in the game, because after knight g3, if let's say black castles, then g5 and the attack will be very, very, very dangerous. Queen b6 was played, so black player did not want to make anything clear what he wants. He wants to castle, or he wants to castle long side, or leave the king in the center. But I think that white reacted very, very nicely here after ab4, rook a8, bishop a8, and g5. Anyway, going for the attack. Okay, there is no king on the king side, but white is making sure that black will not be able to castle short side, and the king is left in the center. Knight d4 was played, c3, take, knight b5, and bishop d2, sorry. I think that this is a very nice moment to stop here, because it's clear that white has a big advantage in this position. White's plan is very clear. He wants to go knight g4, h4, regroup all his pieces on the king side, having in mind h5 or knight h5. You can see the game. We can take a look actually at the game very quickly. g6 was played, h4, h6. There is not much that black can do. Queen a1, bishop c6, bishop e3 right now, take, and queen a7. I'm not going to comment it very much, these moves, because I'm just going to show you how it went. Maybe white could play a little bit more accurate, not to go into the end game, but to return to this position and to look at the plans. It's very, very pleasant. Bishop d2, g6. White could have tried to go queen a1 first, or knight g4 still, and not to allow h6, and then go queen a1. So I think that white's position is pretty white has just big advantage. Okay, I think that's it for the A6. As I said in the beginning of the video, you have choices once again here. Either you go knight ge2 or you go g3. Knight ge2, then you have to be ready for open Spanish, because after knight ge2 and e6, you have an option to go with d4, or you can play again with g3, but I would recommend you to go with g3, b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, d3, e6, and knight h3. This is the move which I like the most, but of course you have another option of playing f4 with the idea of knight f3, and to meet b4 with knight a4, because we don't want our knight to be on e2. We need the square for our queen. In case of d5, then we take ed5, ed5, and queen e2 is very annoying because the pawns on c5 and d5 will be very weak. Okay, then this is it for the A6, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.